Good day and good evening, and welcome to Extreme Mount Farm with me, Chaiji, but you can just call me Kai. Tonight, farming the first extreme of Endwalker, and well, let's say I've cleared that one once, unsynced, like near the start of this expansion. So, strategically, I remember there's a few important things, but I don't know how many of the things we will actually see. So, I haven't gone out of my way to look deep into that. The part of the reason being that the one time I did it in Dawntrail was genuinely a case of we just got a group together and did every extreme once so that I could unlock my mental roulette essentially. And we somehow, as I recall, beat it in the... I'm pretty sure we beat it in the first try. Simply by sheer force of will. Just push hard enough and it'll work, essentially. So I'm not that worried. With that said, hey Aerodel, hey Rust, hey Ceres, hey Giraheen, hey Truck Diving Gamer, hey Ilana, hey TT Abood, hey Ham, and hey Yannick. Hope you're all doing very well. We are 7 players so far. I got the impression that Rust wanted to come. So if that is true, then I hope you're on your way. Sure. That is fine. So we'll give Rust a chance to get their gear together. Something that might be like that happened last time is that last time we had a mount farm, we were doing P4S, which we did with a strategy that involved 7 DPS and 1 healer, which the entire strategy hinged on the fact that we could kill the boss before a specific mechanic resolved, which meant that we had a little bit of basically well, you have to be level 100 requirement, so Rust kinda missed out. But now Rust has leveled up to 100 since, so perfect. Hey Ridlian, hope you do, and Marcus, hope you're both doing well. We'll probably start with Extreme 1, Yannick, and if we actually get all the mounts the group needs, then we will then we'll see if we can do some Extreme 2. But because it's Extreme, it's very unlikely that we'll do that. Simply because of how long the fight probably takes. I can't remember if we need 2 tanks, but it's probably fine to see until we know. That's usually also how we've done it, is if we have a reasonably balanced team, then we should be fine. I don't know if we'll need 2 healers, but we will. It's probably good to have 2 tanks, just to see if we needed it. Congratulations, Oscar. It sounds like you are doing well. Wish OZ wasn't so FRU obsessed right now, I won't know. Well, I mean... Well, this is chaos, so that's not particularly surprising. But it wouldn't surprise me if every region is very obsessed with the new ultimate. Like, among the people that do ultimates at all. Extreme 4 doesn't need a tank and only 1 healer. Which one is that? This one? And also, hey, Korux and Sally, hope you're doing well. I'm relatively sure that Rubicante is Extreme 5. Given the item level requirements. But yeah, same deal. Fair enough. We'll see when we get there. It'll probably be a bit. Is that a new outfit? Extra challenge, everyone must pet size all large. Oh boy. That's extra funny when you have like a lot of summoners. I think it's fine to have them at small. It's cuter that way. But I get where you're coming from, Truck Driving Gamer. OCE dead plus FRU only. Is OCE really that dead, Oscar? Or is it just it's not as active as like Light and Ether? Oh, looks like we're basically all here. Let's see if we can how hard it'll be for. Oh, we can't go in as explorer mode, guys. Unfortunately. But by the way, what's with that? Why are you not allowed to enter the various trial areas with explorer mode? And why not? Also, I just realized normally the normal versus extreme version is just that it's colored in. But in this case, he's also changed pose. Light Ultimate Party Finder isn't exactly in an amazing spot either right now. What do you mean by that, Matthew? Also, hey Matthew, hope you're doing well. 15-minute queue as tank for expert roulette. Yikes. Clear parties have a pretty low win rate. Is that unusual for new ultimates, though? Like, I would have thought that would be pretty normal. Soon your hold over knowledge will be complete! Subscribe to the channel, Final Fantasy 14 so you will. That makes the YouTube screen turn 90 degrees. It's really weird. But if it doesn't, then I didn't say anything. Vertical stream? I feel like that would look really weird. The end has come. Apparently he's a little excited. He pulled a little faster. Oh. Oh wait, there's no doom effect. It's okay. We just need to be healthy enough. Donuts? Will you live to see the end?
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
Interesting. And quite painful. Oh, right, that was that. I got slain. Right, the pink one is half room and the blue one is the cone. I got myself confused. Good thing we have 2 tanks.
I've waited for this day.
Follow the Dorito the Extreme. Is it that bad? Actually, I think it is that bad. I think I remember that. But that was something that came up when we did it that one time.
Natural order overturned.
How about no? No overturning order. Nope. We don't do that here. Do we have this? I don't. Hey Blaustall, hope you're doing well. And also Silverbint, hope you're doing well as well. And Roskind. Some classes really do need a lot of tome pieces, not too bad when playing consistently, but sucks when you want to gear ults. Yes, that's true. Like, if it's a lot of savage gear you need, then it's like eventually you might reach a point where people don't care, so like you can have at least some of the pieces relatively easily. But if it's tome pieces, then there's just nothing you can do. You get like 1 per week, that's it. The best you could do would be have like suboptimal gear. Yeah, yeah, that sounds about right, Ham. I just have to not get hit by that thing. And we're probably fine. Exactly, Blaustall. That's kind of the problem is, oh, you could just use like suboptimal gear.
The end has come.
Smash cut to the random party finder leader. No. No, you can't. It's supposed to be a tank swap mechanic? Yep. I saw that because it gave me a debuff that made the auto attacks hurt a lot. But what killed me was that I didn't do the mechanic right, and then he punched me too hard.
Will you live to see the end?
I don't know, will I?
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
He's strong. It's fine, I have home gang.
For this day.
Triple kill. You can knockback immune it? Oh. It's okay, everyone. We just kill him first. Probably. Yep. That sounds about right, Korux. When we did one of every extreme like a few months ago, the thing that caused us to be stuck on Zeromus so long was exactly the meteors. Like, it took us multiple tries. And Rust, I think what killed you was the knockback? Like when he does the "oh, how I've waited for this day," it's, you know, it's a line AoE through most of the arena, and at the same time there'll be there'll be birds on like corners. I didn't know where it comes from. It comes from him. The natural order overturned. Yeah, that's basically what unsynced farming is in a way. Yeah. Yeah, true. Jose Solization. Hope you're doing well. But yeah, apparently, supposedly, you can immune that knockback. So
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
yeah, exactly, Agony. Exactly.
Become flesh.
Have you done your current extremes for Totems or Wings? I have 99 of the Valiamander wings. But we're working on Everkeep. And right now we also have a little bit of a side project of blind proccing. The current extreme.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
So we're not finished with those. How far we are? We saw Harden Rage in phase 1 last time. And it's something like we only spent we spent time on it after we've done like savage re-clears and unreals, so it's not like we've spent a huge amount of time on it so far, I would say. But we're getting there slowly. It is a really good song for the Zodiac fight. Zodiac is a real nice company seal farm. Oh yeah, I guess you can get a whole bunch of accessories. The good news, as far as we've been told, it doesn't really matter that much that we had some trouble with ice bridges. Because that's where, like, That's usually where your average party finder gets stuck anyway.
Will be beautiful. Malice, become flesh.
Malice.
Will you live to see the end? The marvels of circus were but playthings.
He do be hitting hard though.
How I've waited for this day.
I'll do the science. Or at least I'll make sure to test it. Oh, nice. You might be saying, wait, didn't we just hit? Didn't someone just say that it could be immune? Yes, but it isn't unusual for people to say, I'm pretty sure you can immune it, and they can't remember it right. And then you fly off, and then they go, oh, whoops. Might as well check it. Yeah, exactly, and then they go, got him. Exactly. And yep, so far 0 mount drops. But 0 mounts in 4 clears is not that uncommon. How fast are our clears? I'll try to keep an eye on the actual clock this time. I do. Road to 100 totems, oh boy.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
It will be beautiful.
Malice, become flesh.
Malice, become flesh. Adjusts glasses.
Will you live to see the end?
Nerd Zodiac. That would be pretty funny.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
Kaboom! Zodiac can read now. I can see! I can fight!
How I've waited for this day.
Hey, mount! Oh, 42. One mount. That's true. The general idea is you just have to complain. You just have to bring attention to it. Like, I feel like we haven't seen any mounts lately. And then the game is like, that's a good point. Yeah, the expectation is that we'll be able to trade our totems in for the first 2 extreme mounts in 7.2, I believe. As Chilitator said. Also, I hope you're doing well. And also to live. Good morning, evening. Good morning, evening. Also, your sake. Hope you're doing well.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
Malice, become flesh. Will you live to see the end?
Ow. 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 Ow.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
We're but playthings.
What kind of playthings? What did you play with them?
How I've waited for this day.
This is the uptime configuration. Damage! What do you play with them?
You know, things. I played Dungeons and Dragons every Sunday. But they never let me play. I always had to be the game master. It was really annoying.
Zodiac the Forever DM, I can see it, yeah. He has a lot of hands. He can roll a lot of dice. I said I was going to keep an eye on the timer, and then I didn't. Let's see if I remember it this time.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful. Malice, become flesh.
Oh no, Ridlian, it's a horn!
To see the end.
It's like the Kabi has a horn. It's like a Unicarby. Marcus was exactly at wavelength. Carbicorn, sure. That too.
No! My uptime! My uptime!
My damage. Ow. Speaking of damage. You mean this?
For this day.
Thursday? You're probably right about that, Chili Taters. You just gets the fanciest one. No, but I was trying my best, truck driving gamer. It was the boss who got in the way. Oh, thank you, Ceres. 2 minutes and 11 seconds. Oh, nice. I'll get a lot of clears in then. Persuasion throw to ask a DM for a DM Zodiac for a mount. Ha! What's it? Active perception check. Feels a little inconsistent with when he gets angry that I run at him. Yeah, I roll a 1, I roll a 1. Oh.
Malice, become flesh.
Has YouTube changed the name again? I recognize the profile picture, but not the name. Hey, Chudgens, hope you're doing well. It's been a while. Hey, Catfish Jr. Hope you're doing well. It sounds like you could be doing better. Hope it gets a little more interesting at least. Ow! Ow! Oof, even I felt that one. No worries, Churchens. It's a case of I'm sure I would remember immediately when I see what the name was supposed to be. But I can't remember. It's been too long. FM, hope you're doing well. Chelsea, there it is. And look! Now we have a mount. Lucky Chelsea. Hey Keki, hope you're doing well. And thank you so much. Who won the mount? Sip won the mount. Well, Chelsea, tonight you're our lucky charm, as you can see. Don't worry about it, Keiki. Bard is really difficult. And feeling kinda lost, I think, is like part of the experience there. Oh, the challenger is still standing! 1 HP. Can I have that luck back? Well, we're using it right now. Can we do it after the stream? Just pull time. That might be a good idea.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
Oh boy.
Malice, become flesh. Will you live to see the end? The marvels of circus were but playthings.
That was a pretty heavy lag spike there, and I felt it in game as well. Hopefully that doesn't come back again. That is really annoying if it does.
How I've waited for this day.
It started just as I pulled. Oh, 2 mounts. See, I told you, Chelsea. Desolizations says remove one of the dots and just buff the other dot by 2. I mean, they've basically designed it so that the way Bard works is that the punishment for forgetting to reapply your dot with Iron Jaws is that you have to spend 2 GCDs on it. If you only had 1 dot, then Iron Jaws would also become pointless. Now, that's an entirely separate argument. Arguably, you could say, well, is it necessary that we have 3 dot buttons? I think it's an interesting interaction, but I wish there was more to the dots of Bart than that.
Has come, and it will be beautiful.
Asai Bokash and Foo Poof. Hope you're doing well. Give us 4 dots and merge into a mega dot. You apply all 4 and it just turns into a bigger dot. What happens if you do it again? Maybe that's what they should do. They like make a dot job, and the way it works is that you apply a bunch of dots and then you use like a merge attack that combines the dots into a new one, and then like each kind of dot you can make with that like can be on the target separately. So you can have the dot with all 4, you can have one with any combination of 3, and you just like make each combo. Wouldn't that be weird?
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
The marbles of circus were but playthings. Do you like playing with marbles? I do.
waited for this day.
You hit your the debuff cap on 24-man content. Yeah, I could imagine that they would only make such a job if they actually fixed that. Your Plague Doctor class. The closest we have to that is a Scholar in PvP. You know what's the saddest part about that, Liv? Would you like to try and guess what Sidewinder used to do?
Malice, become flesh. Will you live to see the end?
It used to be stronger when dots were up. Yep. Yep. I can't remember if it was it does more damage if you have both dots up, or if it was it does more damage per dot you have up.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
But it worked with your dots is the important bit.
For this day.
The funny thing is that when they added Shadow Bite, it used to be the AoE alternative to Sidewinder. And then they decided that bards are not supposed to use their dots on AoE. And that's when they decided that maybe we shouldn't make it so that one of your OGCDs that you're kind of supposed to use on cooldown for damage scales with your dots. That's kind of stupid. Oh yeah, true, Silly. It was more that Sidewinder no longer scaling with dot count and Shadow Bite no longer being the AoE version was kind of removed when they made it so that your songs just generate the repertoire on their own, which meant that the only reason you would have as a bard to actually apply your dots on AoE would be either if the dots did so much damage that it was just worth it, or for the sake of Sidewinder, for example. Just give us pains and Summoner doesn't need it anymore. Oh, I have a feeling that there would be a lot of sad scholars and summoners if Bane suddenly reappeared on a different job. Hey Kyle, hope you're doing well. Make Angels also do Bane? That would also be a way to do it. But if the logic that they're going with is we don't want you to use your dots on AoE at all, then, you know, doing anything other than straight up just giving you no reason to use your dots would be weird.
How I've waited for this day.
You know, the funniest part about that, Silly, is I can't, like, off the top of my head, remember all of the numbers. I'm pretty sure I pinned a comment somewhere in the classroom on the Discord server where I punched in the numbers. I also have them somewhere on my phone. Oh, mount. But if I remember correctly, to actually have an average chance of over 70, like, or at least close to 80% like we have now, of getting a 1 proc, simply due to the random variance, is like, I think you needed like 5 or 6, if not 7 dots, just because of how, like, the chance of not getting to getting. I can't exactly remember the details, but I did actually crunch the numbers on that. And the thing that made it really wacky was how when you had more dots out, because of how they worked, you know, you could get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7, or 8, or 9, or so, and so on, procs. Depending on how many dots you were running, which, for a more recent bot, is like, wow, that sounds crazy. But in practice, I believe the sweet spot was like 7. Because if you had more than that, it was like, you can't spend those procs anyway. And like, your AoE button is actually good for damage as well. But yeah, in practice, the way it would work is that, you know, if you got more than 1 proc, for some of your songs, that was basically just, oh, well, you don't get anything. Because in Shadowbringers, Bloodletter, and by extension Reign of Death, did not have charges. So if you got 2 procs at once, the way it worked at that time was also that it fully reset the cooldown instantly. So 1 proc was all you needed. But if you got 2 procs, it just meant that you saw that your song gauge would increase twice, and you'd just be like, ah, I missed out. And that would be the end of that. You just, I guess I just don't get to have that. Thanks. Whereas with Army's Paean, I mean, if you got 4 up to, you could instantly max it out with 4 procs. And, you know, Wondrous Minuet, if you got 3 procs or more, you just instantly had Pitch Perfect. But Pitch Perfect was single target at that time too, so, you know. Because I just want Sidewinder gone. It's just a bunch of press every minute because it deals damage. I mean, there are several jobs that has this kind of feature. And it's better to have something than to not have something sometimes. I would have said the same thing maybe a year ago. The reason why I'm slightly changed on that is because Dark Knight basically lost... The fact they lost Plunge as an attack means that Dark Knights, broadly speaking, don't have anything to press. for a minute. Like, they only press and burst. Sure, they can spend an edge every so often. They can do that. But with Plunge, they had like a thing to check in on every 30 seconds. They don't have that anymore. Warriors have that with Upheaval, and Upheaval is equally as boring as Sidewinder. But I guess the reason why Upheaval doesn't feel like that on Warrior is because that's the... like, it's one of 2 buttons that Warrior has that works kind of like that. Whereas Bard has that, and Imperial Arrow, and Heartbreak Shot. When you have a lot of them, it starts to be like, okay, let me use my 5th just does some damage button.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
The marvels of circus.
For this day.
Yeah, that's true, Bokaj. I would say Sidewinder doesn't feel completely pointless. It is like one of the few things that keeps like some of the rhythm of the job. I've mentioned this. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in my Bard guide that one should get Apex Arrow and the song, like the song Soul Voice gauge. Using Sidewinder as like your ticking clock that keeps track of approximately how often... Oh, another mount. That's insane. How often you're supposed to, like, spend Apex Arrow is decent. Again, that's not a particularly impressive task. But, you know. It would be nice if it was something more interesting, right? It's like the game went, oh, you're not sure if you can get all the mounts? And then just started feeding us mounts. Hey Tinkle, hope you're doing well. And yeah, that also makes sense. I think I've raised complaints about that before. That, like, that's also the reason why I have a problem with Bard's dots as it stands now. In fairness, some of your buttons in your toolkit kinda have to just be there for damage, right? Like, something has to be the payoff. But the fact that your only motivation to apply your dots as a bard is that they do more damage than the buttons that don't apply a dot feels a little... right?
Will you live to see the end?
Especially because the dots used to do more. Why is Bard the only dot with 45 seconds? That is a good question. Bard's dots used to be a lot weirder. If I remember correctly, it used to be the case that when you were low level and had Venomous Bite and Wind Bite, I'm pretty sure they had different durations. And it was only when they turned into Caustic Bite and Storm Bite that they actually had the same duration. I think. Not 100% sure on that. But then at some point they decided that all of them just have a 30-second duration out the box.
How I've waited for this day.
It might be that it was just that Venomous Bite and Wind Bite didn't last as long. What I do remember is that I remember reading like old notes that like in A Realm Reborn, something like that, Venomous Bite lasted like 12 seconds, and then as you leveled up, you got a trait that made it last longer. But initially it was so short that it was like, that was something you have to check in on regularly. Hey Diablo Jobs, hope you're doing well. Yeah, exactly, Silly. Like, the thing is, on the one hand, having buttons that are there just for damage, like, they're the payoff at the end, is one thing. But another thing is when it's a button that used to be something that became the, well, I guess you'll use it for damage. And, like, that's a little sad. I think it's also just that the fact that the dots are so, you know, front-loaded in the bout rotation just makes it feel like, you know, they should contribute in a different way.
It will be beautiful. Malice, become flesh.
Malice, become flesh.
What did Sidewinder do before? We talked about it a little bit ago, Emily, and by the way, I hope you're doing well. The way Sidewinder used to work is that its damage scaled with the amount of dots you had applied to the target. So it would do some damage, but if you had one of your dots on the target, it would do more damage, and if you had 2 dots on your target, it would do even more damage. In Shadowbringers, Shadow Bite was initially introduced as an AoE version of that, where it basically was, you know, AoE like it is now, but it did more damage to everyone based on how many dots was on the primary target. And then, since then, they have removed that interaction and also made it so that Shadow Bite is completely different functionally.
Oh, I've waited for this day.
Yeah, exactly, Giraheen. There was a lot of weird things in A Realm Reborn. Oh, another mount. Well... Thancred comes in from the side. My turn! How many mounts is that now? 6. Here, one example, the weirdest one, I would say the weirdest one that I found when I looked through, like, old stuff on Final Fantasy XIV, like old A Realm Reborn stuff and such. I think the weirdest effect that I saw was on Summoner, actually. They had a trait that made it so when your pet did a critical hit, there was a chance that the Summoner would get a buff for a bit, like 15 seconds or something, I think, that increased their spell speed by like 40% or something. And, whoa, 40% more spell speed? That sounds crazy. And then, like, I did, like, the numbers. Like, what if your GCD was, like, I don't know, 2.3? what would that amount to? And it was like, it reduces your GC by like 0.03. So it was a chance on a crit, which is a chance of itself, for a relatively small speed buff that basically did nothing unless you had some speed yourself. Oh, that's a pretty good one as well, Futsuyuri. Striking tree will now drop weapon every time. Just go in. It's just, you're not there for mount farm, you're there for maybe my weapon will drop. Hey Bronson, hope you're doing well. We're up to 6 mounts in 16 clears. Exactly, Chinitatoes. It's funny when that happens. I had a, like, in Endwalker, when I was doing some extremes to unlock Mentor Roulette, I did Seed of Sacrifice, and I was in a group that, you know, it happened to be a mount farm that I had joined, right? And we got like 5 mounts in like 8 or 9 clears. Like, it was insane. I think there was only one person that didn't get the mount. Like, there were some people that already had it in the group. And the only reason for that was, like, there were some people that had to go. Like, I'm sure they would have gotten it if we had just stayed in for a little bit longer.
Will you live to see the end? The marvels of circus were but playthings.
And yet, probably something like that, Solization. I think, personally, I would guess that there's a possibility that they hadn't really considered that boosting your spell speed kinda sucked. Like, if it had been, it increases your... Like if it just reduced your GCD by some percentage, that would have been way better. But given that it was like, you know, a Realm Reborn thing, there's a very real possibility that they didn't actually consider that specific version, like that configuration sucked. I think some of the first... I can't remember if that was actually a thing or if I'm just remembering wrong, but I think I've read somewhere that ley lines originally just quote-unquote sped up your GCD by 15%, which is not the same as reducing your GCD by 15%. The mathematical difference between the two is that reducing your GCD by 15% is times 0.85, whereas speeding up your rotation by 15% is more like divided by 1.15, which is not as effective. And that happens sometimes. That they balance it like that. Hey Jared, thank you so much. That's why haste is better. Yeah, in a way. I think that's because haste works the same way as reduces your GCD by X%. If I remember correctly.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
Spell speed doesn't affect your Cracia? Well, I mean, it doesn't affect your Flemma or your Psyche either, so it would feel a little meh, I think.
Will you live to see the end? marvels of circus were but playthings.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
How I've waited
It's the my
for this
uptime
day.
configuration. Ham doing the science. You can just take those. You can just take those. It's not if you have any spell speed at all, should Echo. Oh, another mount. That was quick. But if you have latency combined with some spell speed, it can quickly become a problem. The reason is that the animation lock on using an action is 0.6 seconds plus 2 times your latency. So if your latency is like 150 or 170 ms or something like that, then if you have a little bit of spell speed, it'll cause some problems. Actually, no. I just realized that doesn't actually matter. If creation not being affected by spell speed does not have anything to do with you clipping your GCD. It's actually the opposite. Because the Eve creation spells that follow after also don't benefit from spell speed. So you having spell speed does nothing. Like, mechanically, it changes nothing. Which is exactly the reason why sages don't really care about spell speed. Because they have a handful of spells that don't benefit from it. And then they also have, like, some actual cooldowns that don't care either. Like, it's like double suck.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
You know, mechanically, the spell speed shouldn't make you clip your GCD more on Eucratia as a sage. But if your GCD is already clipping randomly, it is likely because you have latency problems. And I can assure you that Sage
Waited for this day.
with latency, like, mega sucks. Because you can basically... Some of you may have seen the trick where if you have a lot of latency, you can use Swift Cast and then use a spell and it misses the timing on Swift Cast. You can basically do that with Eucratia. Every time you use Eucratia. You just want to shield someone? Nope, that's a regular heal. There's another mount. Was that 8? Yeah, that was 8. 8 mounts in 19 polls. If you have enough lag, you can cast a spell while moving throughout the cast. That is actually pretty insane. Wasn't spell speed Black Mage good in Endwalker? Spell speed on Black Mage is a complicated conversation. Because in Endwalker, as far as the information I could find at least, spell speed on Black Mage and Endwalker was slightly higher on like the average damage they could do. Like they had a better regular pull, but that is assuming you're playing standard rotation, because spell speed Black Mage wasn't very good at non-standard, because it relied, like non-standard relied heavily on you transposing quite aggressively, and if you have more than very little spell speed, then it can be difficult to like transpose more than twice in quick succession, and that can even be mildly annoying, and you wouldn't be able to easily sit in ice with lucid dreaming and things like that. Like, it was a little awkward because you'd have to spend extra GCDs for things to function. So, if you assume both the slow and fast Black Mage, or the crit versus spell speed Black Mages, played the exact same rotation, then spell speed would do slightly better on average. However, the slow Black Mage, the crit mage, had a higher peak performance. Both because they had non-standard, just in general they had non-standard, which is slightly better, like slightly better in Endwalker. Like there's new non-standard stuff, that's a different story, but they had that. And also because crit Black Mage relied on luck. Spell speed Black Mage would usually have such a pathetic amount of crit that there was actually no point in stacking it. I think I've talked about this in my videos on crit, that the other stats are directed and determination primarily start at a higher starting point than crit. Like, the initial investment in determination directed is way better than crit. And crit needs a lot of investment. To actually reach the point where it is better than the other stats. The problem is that when it breaks that barrier, it's so good that there's actually, like, if you had the choice, there would be no point in grabbing the other stats. I have talked about this in, I think I talked about this in my more recent, like, Is Tenacity Still Bad video. Having more balanced stats means that you get like a greater whole, like going all in on determination or all in on directed leads to approximately the same end result, although determination will be very slightly better because of the way it's balanced. But if you evenly split them, you would actually get a slightly better result at the end of the day. That also applies to crit, except if you could choose just crit, because crit scales so well with itself, it can overtake the mixed build, so to speak, on average. And that means that a speed Black Mage would typically not have enough crit to justify getting more crit. So they would focus more on determination directed as their secondary stats, which means that they have a more reliable damage output. They don't rely on being lucky with crits, although when they're lucky, they're really lucky because it's 5% chance approximately. Whereas Crit Mage shoots slower, so less casts, but each cast is worth more because the crits. So they have a higher potential. And usually when people look at FF logs for these kinds of information, they just see, well, the best performing Black Mage had more crit, hence crit better. Which is true if you're trying to get the best performance. In my calculations, and I think others as well, speed Black Mage had a better average performance. As in, if you just wanted the clear, and we ignore the practicalities of the two different rotations because speed Black Mage didn't have as much mobility from triple cast because they would finish their triple cast sooner and things like that. They relied more on slide casting, which isn't always that helpful when it comes to it. If we ignore all that and just focus on their damage profile, then speed Black Mage would be the more consistent performance, whereas crit Black Mage was it's the one you play if all that matters is that you roll a 20, right? You roll a nat 20. That's what matters. Then you play Crit Mage. That was like the idea. But then we have things like non-standard that made it so that not only did non-standard only really work well with slow mage, it didn't function very well on speed mage. Like, not only that, but non-standard was more mobile and did slightly more damage, which meant that non-standard now had like a slight mobility advantage. But again, the performance difference between speed and slow was small enough that unless you're trying to like pass the highest possible result, it didn't really matter. Now in Dawntrail, non-standard is a little bit of a different beast, but it exists. A large part of non-standard right now, I believe, hinges on the fact that Despair is instant now. Like, the most basic to explain non-standard line a Black Mage can do right now is you finish your fire state, then you transpose into ice with Lucid Dreaming running beforehand, preferably, and then you use like Ice Paradox, maybe a Xenoglossy. The instant that you have over 800 MP, you transpose back into fire and use Despair again. Like, that's a thing you can do. And it's particularly handy if you're like, oh, Mana Font is almost ready, but it would really drift a lot if I had to like go out of fire, do a whole fire state again. But if I could just, just wait like 10 seconds. Like, if I could just stall for like 10 seconds by doing this janky trick, then I can do it. And not only that, Despair transpose Paradox, Xenoglossy transpose Despair is like 4 instant GCDs. So if you need, like, if you happen to need to move for 10 seconds, that's an option. And now you might kind of get the idea of what we mean by non-standard. It's really crazy, but it kind of works. Let's see, Shonego says, clipping on Sage wasn't the correct term. Rather, your GCDs will drift every Gift Creation spell. That's correct. Chelsea, the thing that Shonego means by that is, if your GCD on Sage is a flat 2.5, like exactly 2.5, you also have instant Fire Paradox and Fire Phase. You do, but if you use that exact line I just described, then you would be entering probably not with any Umbral Hearts, and that would mean you don't get a Paradox marker when you enter. If your GCD is exactly 2.5 on Sage, then every time, like, you use Eve Creation doses, exactly 11 GCDs later, you will Eve Creation doses again, and it'll land on time. Similarly, Flemma will be available on exactly every 16th GCD if you wanted to. And Psych will technically, like, when you weave it, it'll be available in that exact same weaving slot exactly 23 GCDs later, I suppose. But you get what I mean. Because your GCD is precisely 2.5, it'll match precisely the entire way around. But if your GCD is something else, then things will not line up so perfectly. This is normally not a big deal because on the jobs that get some speed, the GCD is usually, like, universally the same, right? All of your things are GCD of 2.45 if that's your GCD, or 2.40 if that's your GCD. So it's mostly fine, right? But Sage has the same problem as Machinist. Machinist, every time they use Hypercharge, they plant 7.5 seconds of GCD stuff in their rotation. If their GCD is exactly 2.5, then it's exactly 3 GCDs of time spent on Hypercharge. If their GCD is not 2.5, then it basically means that when they Hypercharge, they spent more than 3 GCDs on Hypercharge. Effectively speaking. And Sage has the same problem. Every time you have to click Give Creatia into something, then I agree, Chelsea. I don't know if that would be categorized as drifting. I don't know, but I get what Shironeko is talking about, at least. And... Alright, Ham, thank you for coming, by the way. And enjoy your evening. But yeah, the idea is that Sage has some GCDs that are regularly occurring that hate spell speed. Or rather, don't care. Which makes spell speed kind of annoying. Right? Like, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Now, with that said, now the question is whether do we do more Zodiac or do we go on to the next one? I'll think on that. Before that, though, I'll be right back. In the meantime, sanity restored. Alright, I'm back. And it says, notice how undersized the head on those cats are? Yes, kind of. It's kind of strange. I feel like I remember the first time I saw them, I was like, that looks... They look weird, don't they? Liv says, the talk about GZ timing makes me remember something I was thinking of earlier. I remember in Endwalker people were somewhat commonly using 2.4 GCD, but I haven't really heard of that in Dawntrail. Is there a specific reason for that, or is it just me not seeing the people who are using it or talking about it? I would say it's like it's a few things. The first one is that the few jobs that went for a faster GCD in Endwalker, like, religiously, have kind of found a way to not need that. For instance, Shironeko mentions Gunbreaker, they don't need a faster GCD for any... Like, they were functional without a faster GCD, but now they don't need it at all. The second thing is that the jobs that were like, I mean, if you like speed, you could go for 2.4. They got more damage cooldowns. Like, let me put it like this. This does not scale with skill speed. This doesn't scale with skill speed either. So just Warrior, who was already like, I mean, if you want a little bit of skill speed, you can. They got this. They don't, like, having more skill speed doesn't give you more of these. You don't get extras of these as a result of having skill speed. But crit, determination, direct hit, even tenacity does make them bigger. So that is better than the alternative. And that basically blankets across all the jobs because everyone got some more big damage buttons. So the jobs that were like on the fence stepped down from the fence. And the jobs that really liked skill speed have moved to the fence now. And those that didn't care like went further away from the fence. Like they weren't near the fence anyway. And it's still like technically, hilariously too, this scales with spell speed because having spell speed gives you more of these. So the job that really liked spell speed kinda still likes it, right? Hey Yusuf, hope you're doing well. Should we do some more Zodiac maybe then? Can we have like a show of hands of people in my garden that still needs the Zodiac mount? Is it just Liv? Does Agent Monica also need it? I know that's an alt. Can Bard use skill speed well at all, or do all 3 physical range jobs just hate the stat? Bard can use like a minuscule amount, if I remember correctly. Like they have a special opener for like slightly higher skill speed. But that's I don't think they care that much. It's an option. I'm pretty sure all 3 physical ranged are like 2.49 is the best. But yeah, I can also add there is one more thing to the 2.4 GZD live. We'll get into more Zodiac in a moment. That thing is, on a GZD of 2.5, you will have precisely 24 GZDs per minute. You get that by taking 60 seconds divided by 2.5. That gives 24. If your GZD is 2.4, then you have 25 GZDs per minute. Take that by 60 divided by 2.4. Which means that part of the reason why some players liked to get precisely 2.4 GZD is because it led to a round number of GZDs. It isn't as perfectly nice as 2.50 because I have demonstrated this in my speed video that if your GZD is exactly 2.5, if you late weave something, then the next time that action will come up in your rotation, assuming you were ABC always be casting, that will come up as a late weave again. But if your GZD is 2.4, it will kind of like pendulum back and forth if it's 30 seconds. But if it is a 1 minute cooldown, it'll, I think, usually line up correctly again. Answer wants 2.50 if I recall correctly. No, Tingle, the reason why you will see most jobs these days will be like, if it's kind of free to get 2.49 and they care about the alignment of their rotation, they'll be more likely to suggest 2.49 because of frame rate stuff. It's to make sure that your GZD actually comes out on 2.5 seconds that you get 2.49. You don't really need it. 2.5 is fine. But that would be the reason why Dancer wants 2.5 and why Machinist wants 2.5. Does anyone else want it? Naomi? Do you already have them out? So that would be that. And yes, sometimes, as Chelsea says, in a specific case, you might find it helpful to have a slightly faster GZD for some alignment with the encounter. Rust, are you ready? It is very weird, Bokaj. But it kinda makes sense, because the reason why you're going for precisely 1.94 is because of some alignment in your rotation, as far as I know. And if your frame rate is wrong, then 1.94 is actually 1.95 in a trench coat. So it's better to just overshoot with 1.93 instead. Because then you at least will hit the timing that you want. It is really weird though.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
You know, the funny thing about... Oh, whoops, I just realized I didn't have my tank stance on. The funny thing about that, Sally, is that I have a feeling that most, like, savage rating Pictomancer mains will be like... that they might know exactly what you're talking about, but simultaneously will be like... Well, we've just learned to live with that. That's just how the rotation works in that fight. Something, my damage, my pass, and all that. You know. It is funny with that.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
No! Map time! The buff window thing?
How I've waited for this day.
I think the problem there, Bokaj, is that if it's an unusual buff timing thing, you need to avoid that. Then you immediately run into the problem of... then you need to convince the group to do that.
The natural order overturned.
The big brain move, just kill the boss first. There we go, mount. Yeah, and Deke, hope you're doing well. You should use part persuasion more often. Yeah, you should, Ardell. That sounds very effective. So just for anyone checking in a little bit later, that's 9 mounts and 20 poles.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful. Malice, become flesh.
Hey, Jack, hope you're doing well. How's the farm going? Well,
Live to see the end.
9 mounts in 20 poles. So I'd say pretty good.
The The marvels of circus were but playthings.
You're right, Tingle, but hey, it's better than nothing.
For this day.
That's also another reason, I think, why people are like less and less in you could say almost in love with speed, is that where all the other stats pretty much just makes you better at what you're already doing. Having speed in your build at all means that you may have to relearn a fight from like something that has now changed. For some jobs, it's like not a big deal. Because you can, you know, if you're not that that worried about your rotation lining up perfectly with some specific aspect, whatever, right? But for some jobs, it matters a lot. Like they need a certain amount of resources for specific timing, or they need to be in a specific spot in their rotation for their burst and things like that, which means that their burst might look different because they have speed. And some jobs don't care as much.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful. Malice, become flesh.
Yeah, that's true, Tingle. Part of the reason why I'm dodging everything is just because I can. But also because I'd rather not take any unnecessary damage while I have that tank buster debuff.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
It is quite funny that it says damage taken by certain attacks is increased. That's so weirdly specific. No, it doesn't increase the damage you take from everything. It just makes you take more damage from Zodiac's punches, specifically. Specifically the punches. Like these laser punches.
How I've waited for this day. The natural order overturned.
The natural order overturned it.
I think he got tired of us farming him.
I'm out of mounts, man.
Gave you everything I had. I even gave you a card. Like a get out of here card. It just says on the backside, screw you. The standard early buff opener. Well, the problem there, Bokaj, is that that still sounds like, to me, like let's say you're in Party Finder.
The end has come.
Good luck.
Will be beautiful.
You also do the early opener. Oh, okay. Well, there you go. It could be an inconsistency thing. Speaking of inconsistency, earlier today,
Become flesh.
I was like recording and testing something that involved Summoner for a bit. And I got synced down, which means that my spell speed materia turns off.
To see the end.
Right? I forgot to put on whoops, any like inherent spell speed items, which means that when I get synced down, my GC becomes 2.50, right?
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
By level 60, you would notice if you're doing something and your GCD is not fast enough. Like if your GCD is 2.5, then you would immediately notice, because you would not be able to fit 6 astral impulses in the buff in the burst window, right? Now, the interesting part of this story is that I didn't realize that there was a problem until my second Dreadworm trance. Because somehow I managed to fit 6 in the opener. And I recorded it and watched it back and counted 6 and thought, huh? I only managed to do it once. I didn't try again, but I've only ever done that once. So my question is, how? Exactly, Andik. That's also what I did after. Oh, there's the mount. That's exactly what I did after I realized that I had forgotten. I was like, oh, I'll just put on my spell speed thing. But then I looked back the footage because I was like, how is it that I didn't notice in the opener? How did I go for a full minute after that before I realized there was a problem? Shaq, do you have the mount? Oh, well, we could get you the mount as well. When it's this quick, why not? Tunego says, after Astrology got 2 times light speed on 1 minute cooldown, White Mage's Presence of Mind still being 2 minutes feels like Square Enix has a ferret healer and abandoned stepchild. Just want to say, Shirneko, that light speed is not exactly a DPS cooldown, but Presence of Mind is. So it's not, it's like going, why does Warrior have 3 Onslaughts when Dark Knight only has 2 Shadowbringers? Do you know? Yeah, the only thing you need to worry about, Shaq, is that there is a point where you might need to use a knockback immunity.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
I'll try to remember to mention it if when it comes. But there's of course the stream delay and all that. Give us 3, yeah, exactly. Give us 3 Shadowbringers. Yeah, when I say Lightbringer isn't, not Lightbringer, Lightspeed isn't exactly a damage cooldown. It's like, technically, if you time Lightspeed just right, it can allow you to sneak in an extra GCD at the end of buff windows. But that's like a really, really niche detail. Let me put it like this, Shironeko. White Mage isn't massively behind Astrologian in damage. Not massively. They're slightly behind, sure, but they're not massively behind. If you genuinely gave them Presence of Mind on a 1-minute cooldown, then White Mage would now be ahead by a huge margin compared to all the healers. That would not be the solution. That's the reason why the way they have been adjusting the healers recently is... Did you notice, Shironeko, that both White Mage and Sage got like a 10 potency boost to their filler attack in the most recent patch, and Astrologian didn't? That's being careful. They're trying to figure out how much it takes to get White Mage on par. And the solution is not to give White Mage turn their 2-minute burst into a 1-minute burst. That's not the solution. It's not enough. That's the point, Shironeko. That's how Final Fantasy XIV adjusts balance, is that they don't just like pump the gas and just go crazy the moment that a job is behind. If they gave it, like, exactly as Eddie says, you might see that they get an additional 10% potency boost if it's not good enough. And Matthew says White Mage is kind of on par in the current ultimate. There you go. Our DPS healers will always be better when selfish healers are always weaker. The reason for that is that, and this should be obvious, because the damage output of our DPS healers is partly affected by the damage output of everyone else. It means that a buff to Black Mage is also a buff to Astrologian, but not a buff to White Mage. And I agree with that, Miranda. Hope you're doing well, by the way. I agree. I think the big problem that we're facing right now is that more and more it feels like every time jobs get a new thing, it's to make the burst more interesting. But it means that there is a filler rotation that is being sorely mistreated and forgotten.
Malice become flesh. Will you live to see the end?
Yeah, like, it doesn't... Like, the thing is, a job that gives a raid buff at all gets more RDPS as a result of a buff to a different job. So it's difficult to balance. It's difficult to balance. And see, the thing is, if you try to balance it as, oh, well, just make it so that White Mage and Sage is stronger out the box, so that way, it doesn't matter that these buffer jobs get a slight advantage when the other jobs are stronger and help them. Yeah, well, the thing is, there's more to the story than that. There's more to the story than that. There's a relatively high chance... By the way, sorry, Shaq. There's a relatively high chance that part of the reason why Astrologian looks so much better next to White Mage and Sage is because as Astrologian is slightly more impactful than White Mage and Sage, and same with Scholar, by the way, when put in like a pumper group, essentially, like that's trying to maximize damage, it has the effect that if the only thing you're looking at, and you don't think beyond this, if you only look at like FF logs and go, why is Astrologian higher? Well, one reason is that they are maybe a teensy-weensy tiny bit better, but because they're better, they are the ones being brought to pass groups, which means that White Mage and Sage are not. Which means that Skull and Astrologian will have their average performance look better compared to White Mage and Sage, because people are pushing it harder. We don't know if they're exactly as good when White Mage and Sage are being pushed harder. For you being perfect in downtime for White Mage doesn't solve the balance everywhere else. If it's perfect in downtime for White Mage, it's also perfect in downtime for the other healers, surely. What?
Malice, become flesh.
But yeah, I would say, Shironeko, relax. It'll come eventually. As it stands right now, all healers are balanced enough that unless you're like in a passer group trying to get the maximum possible damage, you're probably fine. And if the problem you're facing is, well, I want to be in a pumper passing group and also play White Mage in Savage Reclears, then you're forgetting that the DPS players are also choosing the best DPS jobs for this exact task, and the tanks are doing so too. So, I mean, are you part of the crew or not? Right? Like, yeah, it's annoying that your preferred job isn't a part of, like, the selected few that the Claw has chosen. But White Mage isn't so bad that it's being barred from entry anywhere.
How I've waited for this day.
But I think it's a good thing that when they buff something, they don't just go crazy with it. Because if they did go crazy with it, then it would be, oh, congratulations, like, now White Mage is busted. And then it would get, like, it would be, then you'd be like, oh man, this is awesome, 1 minute presence of mind, and then the next patch they take it back again because it was too much, and then again there's something else. It's like how when they reworked PvP in Endwalker, and everyone were whining that Black Mage was severely underpowered and basically useless in Crystalline Conflict, and not good in Frontline either. And so then, like, the follow-up patch, they mega buffed Black Mage, like, ridiculously hard. And then, like, a day before the patch came out, Yoshi P was like, yeah, well, the patch is already coming, so, like, we can't really, like, we'll have to deal with this later. But I went and tested Black Mage for a bit in PvP, and it's fine. Like, I'm doing well with it. It's just, you're all bad, Lamau. Yeah, he didn't say it like that, but he said it in, you know, like in the nicest way he could. He basically said, nah, Black Mage isn't bad, you're bad. And then we had stuff like Paradox had 2 charges, and other ridiculous things. And I'm pretty sure one of the things they took away when they had to nerf it back down was the second charge on Paradox. And that sucked to lose. But the thing is, Final Fantasy XIV overall is often like balanced in a way where they would rather not take back these things because players get really mad when you take their toys away. They get really happy when you give them toys, but they get a lot madder when you take them away. So it's better to not give them toys that they don't get to keep. But it would probably be really funny to have a presence of mind on a 1-minute cooldown. I don't know what to tell you, TT Abode. That's a subjective thing. Because a lot of people actually like the way Black Mage deals with MP region now. I don't know what to tell you. Like, there's an important IMO that needs to be there. Yes, there are also a lot that don't like it. But it is a split conversation. I think that overall, the way MP management worked on Black Mage before the Dawntrail rework was like... It was actually really unfair. Because... Yeah, no worries, TT Abode. But yeah, IMO. The reason why it was unfair is because the most sweatiest optimizations that Black Mages could do basically required to actually land it perfectly enough. It required you to basically have a plugin on your screen tracking the MP tick timer, so you could do it precisely. That's not fair to all the players that are not cheating.
Malice become flesh.
And that kind of stuff just shouldn't be a thing.
You live to see the end.
There's also the part that having it tied to MP ticks also just feels, in a weird way, really archaic. Because like there's not really much other, like that. There's not a lot of other jobs that actually rely on that. The closest you get to that is healers that get their MP from MP ticks, but they're not like tracking it like a hawk. Like they're not staring at it constantly to make sure that they get the MP tick on time. It's just a thing, and it just takes place as it does, and you will have your MP when you need it. But Black Mage basically had optimization tricks that relied on it. I think that's a problem.
Waited for this day.
But I do see how it, like, if you liked that system, then the current one, of course, sucks. Obviously. Naturally, it sucks. Because, like, you liked it the old way. It's like... It's a bit like if we had discovered that, oh yeah, well, the only way that Shadowbringer's Summoner works is by people using plugins to optimize with. That doesn't justify the rework of Summoner to what it is in Endwalker. There's a more greater there's a difference to that. And also on top of that, you can still be mad that they removed that summoner. Wood says that's not what I dislike. Switching to ice for region takes 2 ice attacks for region. The elemental shift ability is useless. I would say you're missing something if you think it's useless. I actually, earlier in this stream, in fact, pointed out that there is a trick you can do. I might be able to demonstrate it. Just know that I'm basically doing an intentional setup to make it work. There you go. I did something with transpose there. By the way, first try. I've never tried doing that before. And the trick being that you can switch out after you have instant despair that you have now. You can switch to ice while lucid dreaming is ticking. If you can accumulate just 800 MP, you have enough MP to hop back into fire and use despair again, which then allows you to get some more damage. It's really specific. And yet there's also the AF1 F3P standard, which was like a thing that standard black mages also used in Endwalker. You can still do that, and for those that don't know what that is, it's this. That's AF1 F3P standard. You exit Umbral Ice with Transpose, and then you spend your Firestarter. The logic being that using Firestarter F3 in AF3 anyway is, 80% stronger, and then having to enter Astral Fire with a regular F3 is 70% power, so 30% weaker. Whereas if you had when you do this AF1 F3P standard, then you just get one Fire 3 that is 40% stronger. The two Fire 3s that you get in from the regular way of doing, quote-unquote, way of doing it, it adds up to 250% Fire 3, which is two 125% Fire 3s, whereas the AF1 F3P standard is 140%, which is slightly better time management-wise. There's a lot to Black Mage. If you think Transpose is useless now, then I have great news for you, because it's not. It's just people have to rediscover how to make use of it, because Endwalker basically had, I believe they released a book on all the stuff they had figured out, and this change to the way you regen MP in Dawntrail basically took nearly the entire book and threw it out the window. Not all of it. AF1 F3P standard is from Endwalker. That's why we call it that. It's basically the entry-level non-standard play. So entry-level that you use it in standard. If boss goes invuln or disappears, I can't transpose to ice and gain regen. TT Boot, do you know what Umbral Soul is? They actually added that as well. Umbral Soul locks your MP, and locks your Umbral Ice timer, and recovers MP when you use it. If, let's say that you, that you just cast Despair. Let's assume that, you're fighting and you planned poorly, hypothetically, and this is the moment you have to do it, and you do Umbral Soul. Now an intermission happens and you're in a cutscene. You can't do anything. That's awkward, because when you're out of the cutscene, your state will still look like this, and your MP will be at I don't know. If it's a 1 minute long cutscene, you'll have 7,000 MP. So that's a problem. But the key here is that that's just something that you'll have, that's a case of get good. Sorry, that's just Black Mage shenanigans. You just have to know that, as the boss is about to disappear, you go wham wham, and then quickly in here, well, actually you shouldn't use Transpose at all. I'm being an idiot here. Let me just fix my MP again. instead of doing the transpose thing... Awkward. You finish here, and then you're like, okay, the boss is about to go away. I need to get Blizzard 3 and Blizzard 4 in so that I'm ready, and then I can Umbral Soul to lock the timer. And then when the cutscene ends, you will come back with, you know, some polyglots generated and all of this ready to go. The only thing you'll be missing is Thunderhead because it'll timed out. And Thunderhead, we all agree, is kind of silly. But yeah, like, my point is that the major issue with the rework on Black Mage is that this change means that you have to figure out a little bit from the start how Black Mage works now. Especially if you used all these tricks. You have to figure out how they work now. But they're like, it's not all gone. It doesn't all suck. But I will say that, yes, the non-standard you saw in Endwalker, it's not here anymore. It's a different kind of non-standard. Exactly, Umbral Soul actually states that it recovers MP, because it doesn't do ice damage, it has to do it separately. I think we're still missing a mount, right? That's a nice one, Ardell. When you're in the enjoying stream stance, gonna leash on a liking and subscribing burst. Now that's a good one. I will say on that, Tingle, that low-level Black Mage, when you drop below Umbral Soul, that gets a little awkward. And welcome back, Jake. Or, hey, Jake. Hope you're doing well. I had forgotten that you came in late. Because of the exam stuff. Hope it went well, or that your prep went well. As per usual, the farm stream gets derailed by conversation. Well, in fairness, we have a lot more mounts than I had expected us to get.
Will you live to see the end?
And we have to be supremely unlucky for us to not get Shagger mount. So I'm not worried about that.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
The marbles of circus were but playthings.
Alright, Chelsea. Enjoy your evening.
For this day.
Knockback immunity. I imagine that my warning came too late because of stream delay. Hey Jordan, hope you're doing well. How do you make gil in this game? I want a motorcycle. There are many ways you can make money. Hey Louis, hope you're doing well. My thoughts? My thoughts on what, Louis? Oh, will it be beautiful? I think it was pretty beautiful. Although our mount per clear rate is dropping drastically. Was it 9 mounts in 19 clears, I believe. And now we're up to 10 mounts in 29 clears. But one, like, it depends. How much is it? Is it this? What's it? The 7 million motorcycle? Jordan, is that the one you're talking about?
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
It will be beautiful.
I don't know how you'll make 7 million in a short amount of time. The problem is usually if you look into like money-making strategies like that, to make that amount of money requires that you have done a lot of homework beforehand.
Will you live to see the end?
But one way you can make money is like, just as an example, if you do your daily roulettes as the adventurer need, like the job that is actually, like the role that is needed, then you get extra money just for that. Like, that's just one example. Another one is if you can find some niche item in crafting that turns out to be valuable, then you might be able to make bank on that. But a lot of other strategies you could come up with other than that will likely be like, oh yeah, you just have to know the market already. Like things like flipping items. Knockback immunity.
For this day.
Exactly, Louis. Like that's something that I sometimes notice. Like, if you just do your dailies as the job in, like the role in need, you will some of the jobs in need are like, oh yeah, by the way, you get 7k gil. Just there you go. The best way as a combat job is to farm roulettes as the adventurer in need. No, it's a way. There are a lot of things you can do with a combat job. As was it Tingle that mentioned it? Eureka and Boja are also places you can farm. But there you have to already have progressed there. Another thing is you could do treasure maps. But then like it becomes like, well, you kind of need a group to like make it quick. And it's really random chance because, you know, you need like you need to be lucky that the item drops and you get it.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
Smallville says I can make 5 million in a single day by just gathering. Well, there you go.
Malice, become flesh.
And yeah, that's also something you can do. If you can find a good thing to gather that is reasonably valuable, and then just like gather a ton of that.
Will you live to see the end?
Then you can make a lot of money. Like, let me put it like this. It might be difficult to see because of where the chat window, like the on-screen chat is right now, but I have 59 million. The vast majority of that is just me, like, accumulating smaller amounts of money while not spending much. So it's not me going, yeah, I just grinded all this cash. It's just, I didn't spend much. But if you need money now, then that's not particularly helpful, right? Knockback immunity. $700,000 an hour by farming final coil and vendoring the gear. Oh, that's an interesting one I haven't heard of. Does that... I can't remember. Do trials actually run the 100 instance limit? Because I've heard that some kinds of duties don't. Sally says they make money from retainers farming crystals. You see, that's also a strategy, but that's also one where it's like, well, you have to have the retainers there already. Oh, whoop! I didn't know you had to go. Anyone that wants in and be player 8 to try and get Shack them out? I just saw you're also here, Nox. He wasn't stingy, but then he realized he could be. We got 9 mounts in 19 runs. That's fine, Jake. Rust stepped up to the plate. Thank you anyway.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful. Malice, become flesh.
Malice become flesh.
Could you turn something else into flesh for once? You know, just to mix things up a bit.
Will you live to see the end?
We will. We usually do. But what, Nox?
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
Mollusk become flesh. Enjoy, Jordan.
How I've waited for this day.
Liv wrote in the party chat, me having a treat. Cookies! Become flesh! I'll keep it in mind, Nox. We'll see when we get the Shack amount, and we can see if we can get one more. Since we're reaching a point where I'm like, we should probably not start on a new extreme. You know, that's that's really funny, Tingle. That is like the gambler's that's like the gambler's story, right? Like that's the perfect example of how it all how it goes. My free company leader made and lost 300 million gil in 5 days through death rolls. You get really lucky, you win big, and you're like, well, no need to tap out while like you have a hot hand, right? Let's keep going. And then when you start losing, you're like, well, I have to make back what I lost, right? And eventually, you have lost everything again. Ceres asks in-game what death rolls are. So basically, the way death rolls work, broadly speaking, is often it's the starting number is based on how much money is on the line, but that doesn't have to be. It can also just start from an arbitrary number. One player in the death roll rolls a random number between 1 and the starting number. Then the other player rolls a random number between 1 and the result the other person got. If you roll a 1, you lose. A winner takes all. So for instance, you could say you start from 1000. So player 1 random rolls between 1 and 1000, they get 500. Then player 2 rolls between 1 and 500, they roll 200. Then player 1 rolls between 1 and 200 and gets 33. And then player 2 rolls again and gets a 1. They lose. Opponent takes all. And that's basically it. It's just a way people have found to do gambling with the random roll system that is in Final Fantasy XIV, and I believe death rolls, it either originated from World of Warcraft or it is learned from a MMO before World of Warcraft, but they also do it in WoW. It's almost like the house always wins. Oh yeah, I believe the house, quote unquote, is the first one that rolls. Typically, which means they have the possibility of losing outright, but they have the roll with the smallest odds of losing because they have the highest roll first, which means you have a much higher chance of losing. It's complicated because in a way it's not always good to go first because it means you could lose immediately. But going second means that you have worse odds on your first roll. So I would say, from my understanding of probability, going first is always better in the death roll game. Well, when I say the house, I'm of course meaning like usually the way death rolls work is like, yes, sometimes you'll have like just a few players doing it, like just death rolling between themselves. But sometimes you'll have someone like basically standing out on the streets inviting people to play. And they're the house. They go first every time. And because they go first every time, they win more than they lose. Because player 1 wins more. Oh, there it is. Oop, there it is. it wouldn't surprise me, Tingle, if one day they... Like, honestly, if they straight up just removed some parts of the workshop just because of that. So, should we take Nox in? See if we can get one more mount? You know what the most interesting part about it is, Fem? You know what the most interesting part about it is? Like, it's been a bit since I checked, but I'm like 99% certain that in both WoW and Final Fantasy XIV, it is actually against the TOS to gamble like that. Like, 99% certain. Alright, thank you, Samus. So, yeah, be careful. Just in case. Like, personally, I'm like, it doesn't hurt me, so... So I'm not going to be the one going, like, opening up, like, a support take and be like, there are people death rolling on the Limsa Plaza. I don't like it. Like, they usually keep it to themselves, so it doesn't hurt anyone. You see, the thing is, Miranda, I'm not entirely sure, but I believe part of it that I seem to recall I read, at least in the WoW TOS some years ago, was that it had to do with gambling. And they don't want any of that, whether official or not. And yeah, that's true. It can be a problem if there's random gambling in video games, because some people can't deal with it. It's pretty blatant in WoW, and there's never been action taken against it that I've seen. I can't remember, like, I haven't paid attention to if there was such, like, if there has been problems, but I would also like to remind you, Miranda, that in World of Warcraft, you can, I learned this, like, yesterday. You can get booted out to your character select and be ordered immediately to change the name of your hunter pet if enough people report you, or rather report your pet for it. And it doesn't matter what the name is. And some players discovered that the enough players number is like 5. If like 5 players report your pet's name immediately, you get disconnected and told to change your pet name, regardless of what it is. So I'm just saying, while not regulating something, it doesn't, like, that doesn't tell me that much, because they're regulating things that didn't need regulation. So that is to say, I'm pretty sure I read that technically it's not, like, you're not allowed to do death rolling. But basically no one cares. And if there has been punishments as a result of it, then I haven't heard much of it either. That's also why my point was that I'm pretty sure I read it in the TOS. I didn't say that I read that people got banned for it.
How I've waited for this day.
If anything, it's frowned upon? Yeah. Yeah. I'd say it's mostly annoying because the people that run the house, quote unquote, sometimes will be barking in the streets very, like, a lot, and filling up the chat a lot. Because every second they're not death rolling, they're, like, they have time to just advertise. Yeah, that sounds about right, Darth. That says it might be a case of it's against TOS because of countries with gambling laws, but it's not enforced because it's in game and quote unquote doesn't matter. And it's technically not officially supported. I can mend your gear after. You can ask Ardell as well, but we have a pull timer going down.
The end has come, and it will be beautiful.
What's the difference, Miranda?
Malice, become flesh! Will you live to see the end?
I think that's a different kind of death rolling, Miranda.
The marvels of circus were but playthings.
I'm just saying that what I described just like a few minutes ago when I explained what death rolling is something that I've learned from World of Warcraft, not in Final Fantasy XIV. That is to say, the way that I just described with someone rolling, like the rolling lower and lower and lower and all that, is something that they've specifically done in WoW. And it has just also landed in Final Fantasy XIV because the rolling system is there. But I've also seen exactly what you're describing. I believe there's an add-on that tracks that specifically. Like the way that works is that it's like it's a type of group death roll. And I have seen people do that, like in raids, just between polls and stuff. Oh, there it is. There we go. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12 mounts in 36 runs. So an average of a mount every 3 runs. But we also had like a dry period where we had like over 10 attempts, I think, with no mount drop. And I think we also started with like 5 or 6 runs before we got the first mount. But yeah, I do believe that it is what Darth said, that there's a very high chance that the TOS says somewhere officially that no, it's not allowed, you can't do these things, because of like laws and regulations in certain countries that the game is present in. But there is also the part that let's just say that your average player of an MMO in general has a very weak grasp of what is and isn't allowed in the game. That's also like the video I put out yesterday. A bunch of people were like, no, I'm never giving advice because you'll just get reported, which I thought was hilarious because I actually opened with that in the video. That you're not going to get reported for doing something that isn't illegal. Like, well, you could be reported, but you're not going to get punished for doing something that isn't illegal. Like, if you're polite when you're giving advice, not to change the subject, then the opposing person can report you, but it's very unlikely that you'll face any punishment if you did it in a polite way. Which is why you choose your words carefully. But a lot of people learned that you can get punished for giving advice from people saying that they got punished for giving advice, quote unquote. And then, like, it just, like, a feather becomes 3 chickens, right? You say burger to someone, and now you get 3-day suspension. How dare you eat a cookie in my vicinity? I'll get you banned. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it depends on what you're doing. Like, the best demonstration of people not quite understanding what quote-unquote giving advice means is a while back. Like, I would say, without checking, over a year ago, I put out a video called something to the effect of "It's okay to suck at Final Fantasy XIV." And yes, that video is inspired by the "Why it's rude to suck at World of Warcraft" video. And a few people there hilariously, heavily disagreed. But a particular one was mad that it was okay to be bad at the game, and also it had to be okay to be bad at the game because you can't give advice to anyone, because if you do, you'll get banned. And it took me, like, inquiring, like, well, what did you say that got you banned? Like, how did that happen? And them then being a little coy about it, and me going, like, can you be a bit more specific, for them to basically admitting that they told the person something to the effect of, don't use cure 1, use cure 2, something to that effect. And when the person didn't, this guy in the YouTube comments there told them to uninstall. What did you think was going to happen? Like, if you open with advice and then turn around and smack them in the face because they don't take it, you're still being rude. Like, I'm pretty sure you didn't get punished for the advice you gave. Is all I'm saying. Which is approximately also what I said to them. That the problem was with how they said what they... Like, it was a combination of what they said and how they said it, but it was probably not the advice. Yeah, exactly, Giraheen. Yes, if I uninstall the game, that'll make me better. That's good advice. And yeah, exactly, Silly. Like... I think the best way to put it, a bunch of people actually put comments like this on the video from yesterday that I put out, exactly about how to give advice without being rude, essentially. Is that some of them were like, yeah, so basically what you're saying is don't be rude. Yes. And the only reason why it takes me, I can't remember, 18 minutes to say that is because for some people, don't be rude doesn't mean the same. Exactly, Lana. There's a very high chance with someone that just says something slightly rude that they get banned. It's probably not their first time. It's probably not their first time. Fem says, I've gotten in trouble for meeting rude jerks in kind on multiple occasions. Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that, by the way. Don't hit back. The moment you think they've crossed the line, you report them. You don't hit back. Because the thing is, the funny thing is that if you smack back and then report them, if they also report you, you might both get punished. But ultimately what matters most for you is that you now got punished, and that sucks, so you don't want that. So don't hit back, just report them. I disagree. I would prefer to deal with my problems than whining to the hall monitors, but the hall monitors don't agree. Now, see, that's the thing, Fem. If you actually read the player guidelines for Final Fantasy XIV, they also implore you to try and figure things out politely. That's the key. Politely. Instead of just, like, grabbing the report immediately. Thank you, Erdil. They would prefer that you figure it out without just, as you said, grabbing the hall monitors. But the moment you start saying something that itself is reportable, then you've crossed the line. And you shouldn't do that. And part of the reason why you shouldn't do that is both because that's just not smart, but also because some players do this deliberately. To give an example, at some point in Endwalker, I can't remember exactly, I was a little bit into hunt trains, just for a little bit, and I almost immediately learned that the hunt train organizers regularly basically remind people, don't, like, the people that ninja pull the hunt marks, basically, quote-unquote, ruining the train, even though, like, the key is, that's perfectly legal. The players are in the right to pull a mob. It's right there. Just because you had your eyes on it doesn't mean that they can't pull it. But the reason why you have to hold your tongue is because some of those players are trolls and they're basically pulling the boss like this. Waiting for someone to say something. Bam! Gotcha. So sometimes the reason why we run into these kind of situations is because it's someone who's deliberately baiting you because they think it's funny. And you might be saying, nah, the GMs should be better than that. I guess they should, but they can only see what was shared with them and what they can see in the logs, and if they see that you're being a jerk and they're just being annoying, but they're technically doing something legal, then you're the one that's getting punished. So just think about, like, just consider that, Fem. Just for your own account safety. Just imagine that they're trying to get you reported. But the problem is that it's really hard for the GMs to actually be able to see the full picture of what happened. And sometimes what can also happen is that they basically that the troll is baiting you, and they are so successful that they get you to cross the line further than they did, just to get back at them. And that means that you're the worst person, even though they started. And it is difficult. I think a good example of this, maybe not a good example, but a story that might highlight what the problem is a little bit, is a story from my childhood. When I was very little, my brother's like a year and a half older than me, so he was also very little. He thought it was very funny to tease me in a certain age range. And given that I wasn't very old, I couldn't figure out how to communicate well enough to just say, "Mom, my brother's annoying," which meant that my solution was to punch him. But what would happen is that my brother would tease me, then I would punch him, and then he would say, "Mom, Kai is punching," and then Mom would come and say, "Don't punch." And it took a while, but eventually it became that my mom discovered that what was happening is that my brother was teasing and then I punched, which meant that the story became, "Kai, don't punch, big bro, don't tease." But at some point, my brother also straight up just admitted it. Like, he just, one day, he just realized that that was not very nice of me. And just told my mom one day, like, actually, you know all those times where Kai just randomly punched me out of nowhere? Yeah, I actually teased him first. And the problem is that what the GMs see is big bro teasing, and then you punch. And then the GMs say, don't punch back. Or rather, don't punch. Even though you did it as a response to what they did first. They can't see the full picture. They don't understand that what actually happened is that they stole your hunt mark or something. I don't know. And even if that was it, technically they are allowed to do that. They're allowed to do that. Exactly, Snowball. They're missing the full context, and they might be missing some of the story because they're brought in a little bit later. Hence, my advice, because here's the thing, fam. You can socially punch back without crossing the line. You just have to be very smart about it. Exactly, Solization. Community-made etiquette is not terms of service. Does this count as a balanced discussion? I don't know. I don't know. Does it count as a balanced discussion? And yeah, exactly, Louis. The victim's reaction determines if they get punished or not. In some capacity. Isn't it better to not punch and just ignore? Yes. That's also why I said if you get the experience that they're being rude, what you do is you don't respond. You just... That's your answer. And you don't say that you reported them. Because that is actually also not allowed, as far as I know. You're not allowed to announce that you're reporting someone. So consider that one day if someone says that they reported you. You just go... Again. Quite impressive, that. Thank you, Aerodil. Indeed, I made a guide on how to report. Tingle says, I've seen some particularly dumb hunt trolls out themselves. They early pull and then harass people for either successfully resetting the hunt mark or for sandbagging to make it live longer. That is pretty funny, and if they harass enough, well, reporting time, right? I think the community etiquette stuff is there, Vivi. The problem is that hunt trains are not covered by that. Nox says, is it against the TOS to tell someone to read the TOS if they say they'll report you? I don't think it's against the TOS to tell someone to read the TOS. I would actually wager that advising people to read the TOS in a polite way is appreciated. But if they say they'll report you, I mean, I wouldn't say I would say it's not a bad idea to report them for that. Welcome back, Bruntum. We managed to get 12 mounts in 36 pulls. And then we ran out of people to get mounts, essentially. Yeah, I do something similar, baby. I have to deal with this reasonably much because I have comments on my videos, right? I read a lot of the comments. I would have said all of them, but sometimes there's so many that I can't read all of them. And at times I will also only read some of them because by like skimming it, there's a better chance that I'll catch a nice one and miss the mean ones. And the trick here is, and this also circles back to the ignore the trolls thing. If someone leaves a mean enough comment on my video, I will not respond to them. If they go further beyond that, I might just click hide them permanently, and then problem solved, right? If they leave a mean comment that I see that is mean enough on like a comment chain, like essentially attacking some rando who just was saying something to my video, I might hide them immediately for that. Because I can take it. I don't know if the stranger can take it. And they don't deserve it. I know what my limit is, but I don't know what my viewers like you, I don't know what your limit is. So if someone like goes at you instead of me, then like the leash is a lot shorter. Especially if you're not hitting back. Like if a troll comes in and says something funny in a comment chain and then like OP original poster snaps back, then I'll be like, let's see how it plays out. But for the most part, I will try to avoid the angry comments just in general. I don't even want to deal with that. Because most of the time there's nothing you can say to them. They've already decided that I'm a big poopy head. So I'll do nothing. I'll just say nothing. Like, the funny thing that I think of when I see those kinds of comments is, I wonder if they sometimes think to themselves, why is it no YouTuber ever responds to my comments? Why is it they never respond to me? They're responding to everyone else, but not me. Why is that? I wonder if they ever think that, because I look at their comment and go, you know, I could respond. I have a clever response. I'm not going to. Has been standing in the corner for 4 years. How dare you do that to him? But yeah, that's like... I guess one way you might be able to control your... Like, if you have a tendency to blow up a bit, one way you could try and approach it, I don't know how much it will help. It might work better for some people than others. Imagine that you're being recorded all the time. The moment you say something stupid, it goes on the internet. You might as well assume that you are being recorded, because you basically are. These logs are saved on the internet. These chat logs. So they are there. The opponent doesn't have to take a picture or record for them to be technically recorded on the internet. Just assume that you're always being recorded. How would you act differently if you assumed you always were being recorded? Vivi says, I found out in a P4S farm that I'm chill until someone accuses me of mistakes I know I have not made once. Then I'm full rage in a snap. Yeah. I get that. I also that is also something that can get to me, is when someone accuses me of something that I didn't do. But it's pretty funny. I've said this before. If I'm like tanking in like a dungeon and I do a mega pull and then we wipe, either because I failed or because the healer wasn't ready for it, doesn't matter, I just say sorry, I'll pull less. even if I know it was the healer's fault. Like, if I did everything perfectly and the healer didn't heal me enough, I'll just say, sorry, I'll pull less. Like, my bad, I should have pulled less, so I'll pull less. But if someone accuses me of something that I didn't do, then it's suddenly a problem. Weird how that works, right? Dad says, if someone does verbal abuse out of nowhere, reporting is fine. If the infraction doesn't show up in the chat, you have to call them out or not report. Not entirely. It is possible that someone will get punishment, as far as I know, for something that is entirely like practical. But it is a lot easier for the GM to dish out punishment if you manage to report them while they're still doing it. That is how we get those stories of... like, I have told this story before that I had heard about with a warrior in P9N that somehow deliberately managed to accidentally kill off everyone in the raid and then, like, tried to solo the boss from, like, 30 or 50%. And given that everyone else were lying on the ground going, can we just wipe it and try again? They had nothing better to do than write a report. And given that it was actively happening when the GM went, oh, let's see this. Oh, they basically just went over there and just yoinked that warrior out of the duty into presumably Mordian jail, which is GM jail. And then the fight reset naturally. So if it's something someone is actively doing but not saying anything, then the best you can do is if you can report it while it's actively happening. You can still report someone for doing something after the fact. It might not be as effective, and it might, like, the thing is, if someone keeps doing it, it will pile up. You know, okay, this person has been reported for AFKing in frontline after the match is over 50 times. Maybe there's something to it, right? Hey Ryan, hope you're doing well. But it is a lot easier for the GM if you can make them admit it. Like, you see that person AFKing in frontline, you just go, hey, what are you doing? If they say nothing, there's not much you can do aside from, if you can actually find time to report while you're playing frontline, I don't think you can without you essentially being AFK. Aside from that, you can't do much other than note down their name and the approximate time where they were AFKing. And give the story as is. But if they respond, then you might be able to make them admit that they're essentially intentionally sandbagging because they want the match to end. And that you could get punished for. They could get punished for, I should say. Solization says, I usually just ask permission before doing mega pulls. That way, if the healer says yes, it's always their fault if we wipe /S. I've talked about this before. This is an interesting subject, is that some players, some tanks, namely, will ask before they pull if it is okay to pull big. There's one specific reason why I don't do that. If I ask if we can pull big, and the healer says yes, and then I pull big, and then we wipe, whose fault is it? The healers just said they could take it, and they couldn't, clearly. It could be my fault because I didn't tank well enough, but they said they were ready for it. If they say no, then we're just not mega pulling. So what I do instead is that I pull big. I might like be a little nicer if it's a sprout. I'm like, maybe I won't. If I can gauge how ready they are for are you guys in Party Finder? No, Kylan, we actually like wrapped up. We're just like talking a bit after the fact. But we were just like collecting ourselves here. Just grabbing people. I hope you're doing well, by the way. But yeah, what I will do is that I will pull big. And yeah, and even if it's a sprout, I'll usually pull big anyway. But if I know, oh, this pull is particularly evil, then I might at least consider that, oh, I might have to be the one doing the heavy lifting. But normally, I will pull, like, I'll pull big. And if it goes well, then, like, if I know it's a really hard pull, I might bring that up. Like, if it's, like, again, if it's a sprout heal, I'll be like, oh, that's very, very well done. Like, good healing. And if we fail, I'll just say, sorry, my bad, I'll pull less. And sometimes they'll say nothing. But it doesn't happen often that we wipe. And the times that we do wipe, my experience is most of the time that the healer will be like, no, I wasn't ready. I'm ready this time. Do it again. I'm ready now. Let's try that one again. And the way I perceive that is that they recognize that I'm not going to get mad at them for failing it. Even if they fail again, I'm not going to get mad at them. So they're willing to take, it on their shoulders for the second go, because now they're ready. Now they know what's going to happen. And then we do it again, and like, I haven't had it fail as a result of that. Also, hey, tell them out. Hope you're doing well. And Fizzle Whistle. That's on Nick. I think I didn't say hello to you earlier. Hope you're doing well as well. And that is true. That is something that people forget. Is that... And the reason why people... I think I have several videos where I actually bring this up. Is that a mega pull failing can... Emphasis on can be because the tank isn't using defensives well enough. It can be because the healer isn't healing well enough. But it can also be because the collective damage output of the group at large isn't high enough. And the most awkward example of this is both with tanks and healers in two different ways. A common one that I hear every now and then is tanks being afraid of using sprint because they might lose the healer. Like, the healer will fall behind and then the tank dies because the healer isn't there to heal them. But the reason why that's a problem is because if you're just... Like, if you're pulling like this, you just run past the mobs like this. Just run. The mobs will get nearly maximum uptime just smacking you as you run. Like, while you're running, just oof, oof, oof. But if you're sprinting, most of the time, the vast majority of mobs will not be able to keep up. Yes, just regular running will lead to the enemies getting fewer hits in than if you just stood still, but they'll get more hits in than if you were sprinting. Which means that the reason why it's a problem that the healer isn't keeping up with you when you're sprinting is because you're not sprinting. Like, the reason why you need the healer to be able to be within range of you constantly while you're just running is because you're not sprinting. So it's like A leads to B. The reason you need the healer to be close is because you're not sprinting. So if you were sprinting, you wouldn't mind that the healer falls behind. Because what happens is you'll take nearly no damage until you reach your destination. And what happens when you reach your destination? You're probably going to be fine. And if you're a warrior, don't even do that. You just go, oh, I'm losing HP. And then you're probably going to be fine. Another one I've heard is if you sprint, the mobs will fall behind, and then you can't, like, shield lob at them and whatnot. And then you will lose aggro. And It's actually the same problem if you're just like running down the street while pulling the mobs, just doing ranged attacks because like your AoE might not connect very easily. Then you're also giving the DPS more time to just filler rotation on them while you run. But if you just sprinted, they would actually lose about like close to a third of the uptime they would get, because you would finish the pull faster. So like that one is also the reason why you're seeing this problem is because you're not sprinting. So if you started sprinting, it would solve itself. The opposite version of this with the healer is the non-attacking healer. I can't attack. I need all my MP to heal the tank because I need to spam heal the tank or they die. It always happens. But a lot of the time, assuming an average tank, because yeah, sometimes you'll have like bad eggs, right? Really bad tanks. But your average tank will be fine, but only if the healer's also attacking. Like at some point, the pull starts, everything's going fine, the tank is using defensive cooldowns, the healer has defensive ability, like healing abilities available. Then, as the fight progresses on, this can be because the DPS is weak, it can be because the healer's not attacking, it can be because the tank is not attacking hard enough. At some point, the tank will start to be running on fumes. They'll be like, well, I've used Rampart or Damnation, I've used Reprisal, Bloodwedding is on cooldown right now, I've actually used Holmgang. I have reached a point where if I use more cooldowns, it will impact my ability to do the next pull. But I have to do it because we're dying. And the healer is just spamming kill 1. It's a really rare situation and really unlikely, especially if the tank is pretty decent. Yeah, exactly. I even used Arm's Length. You don't have anything left. Then it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The reason why the healer had to spam heal you is because the healer wasn't attacking. It's actually something that it's not exactly the same, but I actually do deal with this on M3S, which is Brute Bomber. In the phase, is it called Final Fuse Down? The one where everyone has to like soak a fuse. If you wait too long, then the defensive cooldowns that are running will run out, and then it becomes worse, like it becomes harder. So the moment you see the white mages using Temperance, then it's like, okay, we have 20 seconds, let's get going, we need to get as many people through before Temperance ends. Like, who cares about whether there's a barrier up? That damage reduction is crucial right now, and we need to get people through before that ends. You see Karakoli running, you see Panheimer running, like, the duration on those effects is crucial, and this mechanic takes a while to resolve, so sometimes you just have to go, everyone's not topped up, but next person go, because I'm pretty sure we'll survive. And you just keep going with that. Like, it's the same idea. It's the exact same idea, is that you pull a huge pull as a tank, and then you reach your destination, and then you use big defensive cooldown. And then you're like, alright, let's get it going. We need to kill these guys before I have to use something else. Because if you have to use something else, then you might not have it for the next pull. Unless there isn't a next pull, that is a problem. Yeah, exactly, Sally. Like, the key here, I don't... come to think of it, I don't even know if SIP uses Temperance for that. It was just an example. The point is that if there's any damage reduction cooldowns running during that phase, then they themselves are like... They're basically a quote-unquote DPS cooldown, in a way. Like, imagine each fuse that needs to be soaked is like a GCD. And you have 20 seconds. I can't remember if you need to have 3 or 4 seconds between each fuse. But optimally, you want it to be vulnerabilities away, next person. Boom, 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 boom. Because the quicker you do it, the more fuses you can fit inside this burst window. 4 seconds. Alright. And yet, like, that's ultimately also how, pretty much how we do it, Silly. It's just that because I'm the raid leader, like, calling all the names out, it becomes a little closer to my problem. And it also means that if I look at the HP and goes, it's not time, then no one will hear me call a name. Louis says, I will say, as playing as and then just picking up Sage, and then learning at low levels they have no regen, changes your approach to polls. Yeah, in a way. But yeah. This is like the kinds of problems that can make it difficult to see what the problem is. Because sometimes the reason why you have to do this highly inefficient thing is because you're doing this other highly inefficient thing. So like one problem makes the other problem a requirement. Which is also the reason why, as Erdel shared earlier, those links, why I have those videos. Mistakes tanks make, mistakes healers make, because sometimes you need the full picture to realize what the problem is. Yeah, we got 12 mounts and 36 runs, and I got 1 Crystal of Eternal Darkness. Bleh. Only 1. Probably wouldn't make the trophy anyway. Got 2 cards. Did I get every piece of equipment you can get? There's 4 of each roll. I think I missed something. Like there would be tank, healer, mage, strength, and dex. So I'm missing 2 things. What do you mean, Louis? Is what the same for Scholar? You know, region. Yes and no. If you land in a duty that is at least level 20, then Sage has Physis, which is technically a region. The same applies for Scholar. If you land in a duty that is at least level 20, then they have Whispering Dawn, which is technically a region. But both Scholar and Sage gets the upgrade to their Sacred Soil or Keracholi that makes them heal at 78. Here's a fun fact. Sacred Soil, in terms of raw power, if we ignore the part we have to place it right and all that, Sacred Soil is objectively better than Keracholi. Like, objectively better. For those that don't know about it, I'll start with Keracholi. You click it, boom, 15 seconds of damage reduction and 5 ticks of 100 potency healing. So it's 15 seconds of 10% damage reduction and 500 potency healing. That's really good. It's better than Ixocholi. Like, just in every way, the only thing Ixocholi does better is that it's slightly faster healing. Scholar's Sacred Soil, on the other hand, is a dome. Domes and placed AoEs, meaning Doton, Salted Earth, Asylum, Sacred Soil, and technically Collective Unconscious? When they are placed, they immediately tick once. Unrelated to the healing over time effect they might have. They tick immediately when you place them. And then they tick, in the case of Sacred Soil, 5 times. Which means, as you can probably already count out, Sacred Soil heals for 600 potency. Rather than 500, assuming that the person stays in the dome for the full duration. And yeah, to your questions about the tooltip on Sacred Soil, it's just worded weirdly. It's not different from 10% damage reduction. I actually have demonstrated this in one of my Mythbuster videos because people asked. It's the same as with Paladin's Passage of Arms, which, by the way, Passage of Arms also lasts a bit longer than what it says. That is why you can just do this and it still kind of works, because it lasts like about 1 to 2 ticks of duration. Which is also the other thing that makes Sacred Soil objectively better than Kirakoli. It's probably easier for me to demonstrate it. Boom, immediate healing. One more. This is the damage reduction effect. One more heal. This is damage reduction effect. Notice when that disappears. And by the way, 5th healing is coming now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, it's probably more closer to 3 seconds because I counted fast, but about 3 seconds of extra time on the damage reduction that I'm not supposed to have. Meaning Sacred Soil lasts... It heals for 1 more tick than it says it does, and it lasts for about 1 more tick than it says it does in terms of damage reduction. There's a video on that part of my bingo card is really smudged, yeah. But the problem is, Darth, the fact that it says that you only take 90% damage doesn't mean anything. It's still affected, even if it did mean that you only take 90% damage, that's still affected by diminishing returns. Diminishing returns isn't a mechanic of the game, it's a mechanic of math. If you have 10,000 damage coming in, but you have an effect that says minus 10% damage, and an effect that says minus 20% damage, and an effect that says you only take 90% damage. The way diminishing returns... Exactly, it's because they're multiplicative. That's the mechanic we're dealing with. This is the same as this and this. Because the way you calculate this, and the order doesn't matter by the way, is that you take the 10,000... times 1 minus 10%. Which is 9,000. I imagine Darth actually knows this, but for anyone else that needs to hear it. And then you go 9,000 times 1 minus 20%. And there you go. And then you go 7,200 times this. It just did the recalculation for you. So it's just it just means that you do times 0.9, which is the same thing. see. I might have mathed that wrong, but approximately this. Isn't any damage diminishing returns on reprisal or the roll thing on boss, is there? Yes, there is, Darth. Yes, there is. Let me demonstrate. The boss is going to hit you for 10,000 damage, but reprisal means they're only doing 9,000. Then you have the 10% from the thing from before, and you have the 20% from the thing from before, and then you have the 90% from Sacred Soil. The starting point is 10% lower, which means that everything else is going to just deal with the remaining 9,000. That's what diminishing returns means, ultimately. The fact that reprisal reduced the starting number means that the rest of the calculation now deals with the number that is 10% lower. Because it's multiplicative, it doesn't matter. It's always diminishing returns. The only way to avoid diminishing returns, as Miranda says, is if it's something that stacks additively. Interestingly, hey Lawrence, hope you're doing well. Interestingly, the things that stack additively in Final Fantasy XIV are percentage bonuses to chance. Which means this is an additive plus 10% chance to your crit chance. Straight up, flat on top. But because crit chance itself is a chance, it doesn't feel like additive bonus in the same way. Like, it doesn't feel as impactful. Like, ultimately, 10% crit chance is somewhere in the ballpark of 4 to 6% more DPS. And that stacks multiplicatively with other damage bonuses. So even though it's actually an additive bonus, it comes across as a multiplicative bonus. And positive multiplicativity does not have diminishing returns. In fact, they compound on each other because the more you have, the more you get. Well, what I can tell you there, Darth, is that despite the spaghetti code, the math is actually pretty much accurate in Final Fantasy XIV. I hope you get well soon, Bronzo. I think it's complicated to say, like, I'm pretty sure the reason why they decided that chances like this are additive is because, well, let me put it like this. If Chain Stratagem increased your crit chance by a multiplicative value, then it would mean that if you have 0 crit stat, then your crit chance is 5%. Then Chain Stratagem would give you 0.5% of crit chance. Which is not very much. So basically part of the logic is that if they actually did those like that, then it would be bad. But, I think there was one exception to this in the game. I mentioned this earlier in the stream, that in A Realm Reborn, summoners had a trait that said when your pet gets a critical hit, there is a chance that you will get, for I believe 15 seconds, something like 40% more spell speed. But the difference here is that they named a stat. They didn't say reduce your GCD or increase the speed of which your GCD goes. It straight up said your spell speed. Which means If Chain Stratagem increased your actual critical hit stat, it would not say increases rate at which target takes critical hits by 10%. It would say increases critical hit. Which sounds like grammatically wrong, but that's because it's referring to this, which is called critical hit. So it would be like saying increases your strength. And warriors, like Berserk, used to read increases your attack power by 50%. And your Foresight was like that as well. It depends on the thing. But I can say, for hopefully your peace of mind, Darth, that damage reduction in Final Fantasy XIV is diminishing returns all the way down. And there's no, like, surprises there. The only surprise is that some boss mechanics require tank LB or ignore damage reduction. But it's never... it doesn't ignore reprisal, but it ignores everything else. No. If it ignores damage reduction, then reprisal doesn't work either. So I can assure you on that. But I can also say that, yeah, Sacred Soil and Passage of Arms are worded weird. They're just straight up worded weird. I don't know why they're worded weird, like why they chose to do this and just left it like this. I'm pretty sure it has been... Yep. Sacred Soil has never had the creates a designated area in which party members will only suffer 90% of all damage inflicted wording changed, which means that there's a possibility the reason why it's worded like this is because that text is vintage A Realm Reborn text. If you do tank LB3, shields sometimes work. I can say that shields appear to always work. The problem is that the things that kill you through shield usually kill you anyway. That's correct, Silly. That's why I said Sacred Soil and Passage of Arms. Which actually makes it even weirder, because that means Passage of Arms got that same wording in Stormblood. Sorry, I might have not mentioned Passage. My bad. I meant Passage of Arms and Sacred Soil anyway. But yeah, something like you can test this relatively easily. If you find a boss that has a Hardened Rage that does, you know, 9s of damage. If you put a barrier on yourself just before that hit lands, you will notice that it doesn't do perfectly just all 9s. It'll do a little bit less than that. And that's not because they have variance in their damage. It's because, well, it did respect your barrier. Shame that you didn't have 10 billion HP, because this attack does 10 billion damage. We don't need domes this big, no. It is really funny that they decided to make them this big. Because I specifically remember when Sage came in Endwalker. Like, let me put it like this. In Shadowbringers, my favorite healer to play, like, in dungeons, was Scholar. Because of Sacred Soil. I love Sacred Soil. It's so good. It does, like, it's the healer, like, pure healing equivalent of SIs. It's like it does everything that you need it to. The only thing it doesn't do is put barriers on people and rest them. But it heals well. It blocks damage. Like, if you're doing a big AoE pull, you put this down, and everyone's better for it. But it was really small. So it was relatively possible that the tank could just step out of it. Then Endwalker comes, and they're like, what if we made it so that your tank can't dodge your super nice barrier that heals, or damage reduction that heals? Like, in Endwalker, I have done dungeons where I had entire sections of the dungeon where the only thing I did aside from Cardia was Karakoli. Because it's that good. Better to have it and not need it, absolutely. Yeah, funny that. Yeah, we managed to have some math, Kai. Actually, speaking of diminishing returns, if there's anyone that is in the chat that is like, well, I would like to know more about all this, I have a video about how diminishing returns work. So I'm just saying, if you want to know more or want the more details, they're there. And there's a reason I made the video, because a lot of people don't actually understand how diminishing returns work. Like, a lot of people don't understand it. And it explains both how tanking diminishing returns, like damage reduction, works, and it also explains how the opposite, which is stacking damage buffs, work. It's just like in the second half. It also explains how effective HP works, and how that can be relevant in certain cases, and how a barrier technically has a positive relationship with damage reduction and things like that. And thank you, Aradel. What is the best job that can just press their burst whenever your co-DPS decides to burst in dungeons without losing a lot? Viper. Straight up, it's just Viper. Because Viper is, among all the DPS, the only one that doesn't actually have a cooldown that they need to worry about. They have Serpent's Ire, but they can hold that one for 30 seconds. And if it doesn't come up, they'll just use it. And they can just hold resources to burst when someone else clicks a cooldown. Not even something like Machinists can be that efficient, because Machinists, you know, they have to spend their battery eventually, they have to spend their heat gauge eventually, they have to click Chainsaw and Air Anchor on cooldown. But Viper has, like, they technically have 2 cooldowns. They also have Vice Winder, but Vice Winder is usually not part of your burst. And if you hold a few Uncoiled Furies, then, like, you see someone press a cooldown, you press Reawaken. That takes around 11 seconds to resolve. And then you use Uncoiled Fury. Now you've spent, like, 17 seconds. And that's probably fine. Because the thing is, the cooldown that was cast, probably you weren't ready right on the first GCD, so you probably lost a few seconds. So by the time the second Uncoiled Fury has resolved, the buff is probably over. So if you just hold 2 Uncoiled Furies, which is not a bad idea in general, like if you don't know that there's a burst coming up, like, and there haven't been one in a while, holding them for the ranged benefit is also good. So you can just go, oh, well, there's nothing ranged coming up in a bit, so I can just add these to my burst. And then, like, it's not perfect. Like, the perfect one is that you reawaken, and, like, in the middle of your reawaken, raid buffs come up. Because it takes 11 seconds, you would rather have 2 Ouroboros in the 20-second buff window than anything else, really. But 1 full reawaken plus, like, 2 Uncoiled Furies is a pretty good burst. Like, it's actually pretty good. And Viper can just do that. Daedalus says, what kind of tea are you drinking? Well, right now, this is just flavored water. And I believe a black currant. The tea that I had earlier was peach apricot. Monk at exactly level 60 can burst whenever, because you don't have your big cooldowns yet. Kinda true. There's just a part where you kinda have to, like, perfect balance at least once every 40 seconds, because, like, you shouldn't sit on 2 charges. I would say the problem is, Miranda, that both Dragoon and Monk and Ninja have their own burst cooldowns. Which means that they can't, like, basically, the logic that I believe the question was presented with, that Bocage came with, is not, well, you can burst on a dime. It's, well, Ninja, Dragoon, and Monk, at max level especially, want to burst when their burst is ready. They can't just sit and wait for everyone else to be ready. Imagine that you have a red mage in your group. Doesn't have to be a red mage. And the red mage kind of like, every so often they'll just like flip a coin and go, will I embolden now? Nope. And then a bit later they'll like toss the coin again and go like, will I embolden now? Nope. And then a bit later they'll try again. Nope. Like, if you've ever been in a random duty and you do your opener, and then right as your last burst GZD lands, you hear the sound of Astrologian's Divination, then you know what I'm talking about. There, a Viper would technically be able to go, like, usually in the opener they'll just, you know, they'll just go blast, right? But at any other point in the fight, the Viper can just like stockpile one and then only burst when they hit 100, and otherwise they'll just hold one for when someone else uses a cooldown. And then they can just burst there. And a ninja can't really do that because they kind of want to use Kunai's Bane on cooldown. There's all the other stuff, but they kind of want to use Kunai's Bane on cooldown. Dragoon can't really do that because they kind of want to use Gaishka on cooldown. And Monk can't do that because they want to use Riddle of Fire on cooldown. Yes, they could wait a little bit, but like, if you don't know how long you need to wait, then it's better to not wait. Moral of the story, don't count on someone to burst on time during a dungeon, or a trial, or a raid. Like, don't count on it if you don't know them and it's not hard content. Assume they won't. And in that scenario, Viper is the king because they have so much flexibility in this specific aspect that they can burst whenever. 18 Ali, we got 12 mounts in 36 pulls. The real answer would be more users is always better than lining up with buffs. So if holding to match buffs means you lose a usage, then it's better to just send it when you need to and don't worry. True, Miranda, but as I said, that's exactly why we said Viper is the best in this specific context, because they uniquely have the freedom to not send it without losing anything. Like, they can legitimately sit for 30 seconds plus on an extra burst. Just in case. But yes, in practice, what about the other roles? No, I would say all 4 tanks kind of suck at this. The closest you get to is Dark Knight, because Dark Knight can, you know, accumulate some mana or MP to burst when it happens. But generally speaking, all 4 tanks have a reason to burst on the minute. Among the healers, I would say the most capable of just kinda at bursting when it happens, and they kinda suck at it, is Sage and White Mage secondarily. Sage because they can hold a Flemmer to just get a small, like a little hill on their damage when they see a raid buff. And White Mage because, I mean, if they have a Flato's Misery and you use a raid buff, kaboom, right? But aside from that, like, all healers and all tanks are like the capacity to just kind of sit on a burst is rare. That's why the answer that I give is Viper is the best at it. Other options? Not really. Like the second place in that aspect is, like, I would say Black Mage. Mainly because they'll just be like, oh, I have a raid buff. Xenoglossy, Xenoglossy, Xenoglossy. Oh, my Astral Fire ran out. So they might just go, oh, a buff. I could use ley lines now, I guess. But yeah, the problem for Black Mage is that if the buff comes out at the wrong time, you have like the Black Mage like in the middle of switching gears, like they just ran out of MP and they're like, oh, I have to use Blizzard 3, and then you see Embolden come out and they're like, ah, well, I have to use Blizzard 3 now, and Blizzard 4, and now Ice Paradox, and set up my Thunder, and now I'm ready, and like half the buff window's already over. Like, I mean, at that point, if you have Xenoglosses, you could just go, well, I mean, I'm in Ice, so Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Xenoglossy, 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 Paradox to refresh Umbral, Ice, Thunder. Hey, maybe you get an additional Polyglot in that time frame. Boom, again. And then you have like an actual okay burst, but the point being that Black Mage can be caught in the wrong spot in their rotation, and they might not be able to adjust to that. They'll just be like, well, guess my ice damage is a little bit better. Yeah, exactly, Dart. That was also why I only mentioned holding a Flemmer, because, like, you don't have anything else that you could burst with as a Sage. But, yeah. Good old grind. And thank you, Ridleyan. Enjoy your work. Yeah, we got our big old farm on. And we got 12 mounts and 36 pulls, and then we had a good talk about how the game works. A little bit here and there. A little bit about how social aspects in the game works. Sorry. But if you enjoyed this particular stream, it helps me a lot if you leave a like on it here on YouTube. That tells the algorithm this was an enjoyable stream. I'd like other people to enjoy it as well. So thank you so much for the support in advance. And if you'd like to be part of the Discord community server, there's a link in the stream chat right there. And there you will find a weekly schedule where you can see what else is happening in the coming days. And you will find the announcement room with links to videos and streams when they come out. And if you grab the reminder roll in the role assignments room, you'll get a notification whenever I post these, as well as an extra one around 15 minutes before stream starts, so you don't miss a second. And if you'd like to support the channel even more directly, you can become a member of the channel, you can gift memberships, you can use the super chat system, or if you don't like any of that, there's also a Ko-Fi link in the chat from Aradil, thank you so much, and also in the description, and on the channel, and many places. And that is also where you can support the channel and me directly, so that I can focus on doing things like this with all of you. So thank you so much for the support. With that said, that'll be all for me tonight. Maybe we'll do the next extreme on the list next time. But good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the world, and I hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye!